Recorded live on the turf at Mad Lab Training Studio in Eldersburg, Maryland. This is the Time to Win podcast with Alex and Dan. Now let's get this podcast started.
So Dan, at this point then, for lack of a format, for lack of a pre-planning sort of, discussion, I'm just going to throw something out there and let's see where it takes us. I'm going to ask you, what are you having for dinner tonight?
Dinner tonight. That is good. So I have a pork chop that I just marinated and thawed out, ready to go.
Right. Okay, so the reason I ask this is that, you can get a decent result if you're just winging it, right? But you can get a better result if you're thinking ahead a little bit, okay?
Okay.
And so, what do you want, right? It starts there. Like, what do you want? What do you want today? What do you want for dinner? What do you want out of life, right? And, it bugs me sometimes that so many people don't ask that basic question, and they don't ask it ahead of time. They just do.
I would say most people don't ask that question.
Right. And so, I was thinking about that because in the fog of trying to wake up before the coffee was kicking in, I was thinking, what do I want for dinner? And it's not because I'm an expert at planning ahead. It's because I'm a slug and I love to eat, right? So I'm like, oh man, I want to fix something yummy. And I got out a frozen chicken breast and I put it on the counter, right? And it's going to thaw. And tonight I'm going to make chicken curry, right? But it was that.
I loved curry.
Yeah,
we
seriously.
Talked about that,
right. But it was that, and that got me thinking, right? Like, I'm planning ahead. Last night I cooked dinner for some friends over at church. And, I made this dish that required, it didn't require 4 days of prep, but I had to go out and buy some ingredients. And then I had to prepare some ingredients. I had to go get some more stuff and I had to spend some time cooking. And, it ended up being like a 4-day cycle from thought to delivery of finished product. Right?
And that's just a dinner.
Yeah, and that's just a dinner. But, I wanted to do something. I thought about it, and I put some planning into it. And it wasn't just like, oh, man, I got to make dinner for 8 people in 15 minutes, What am I going to do, right? And it got me thinking, there's so much, like you said, so many people don't put any thought into what do they want and how are they going to get it and how long is it going to take and what do they need to do to get there, right?
I completely agree with you. And oddly, I just had this conversation with my son. So my son,
Okay.
Jack is 12.
Yeah.
And he was, they have little speed bumps or whatever in school. And something happened with math tests or whatever. And he gets generally good grades. And I'm like, Jack, I think right now in school, the main thing that you should be doing is you figure out the stuff that you're good at, figure out the stuff that you like doing, and you should be working on what are your skills and then how are they going to help you later on, right? And then as you get older, you start to dial in more with that and be like, what do I actually want to do based on the stuff that I like doing and what my skills are? And then go to another stage and go, what do I like to do? What are my skills? What am I passionate about? And how can that help society?
Right.
And then you start to find instinctually your place in society, but we're not even taught to do that.
No. And it sucks that we're not taught that. I mean, there's so many things that we're not taught, but we're expected to master at some point,
You are
right?
not kidding.
Like, I don't know, balancing a checkbook or public speaking.
Anything to do with taxes.
Yeah, right. It's just being a good person, right? We don't even teach people how to be kind, right? But, that question, what do you want and what is it going to take to get there, right? I think that's a really important thing. And, people want instant results, and they're not willing to put in the hard work over time to get what they want, right? And they're not willing to, people want instant gratification, right?
For sure.
And it's a pity because most of the things that result from instant gratification are instantly gone too, right? Like they're not really satisfying long term.
Right, it's all short-term stuff for the most part.
So
you see it in diets all the time.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So, I came in here a year ago. I don't know if you guys can hear the clanking in the background. Somebody's hoisting some iron today, which is a really good thing to do.
Not much iron though. It's Ryan Brown. He's not very strong back there. So only a couple 400 pounds on that bar.
But Dan, I came in here a year ago, a year plus, and I thought I was strong, right? But I knew that there were some things I couldn't do. I said, I want to get a one-legged pistol squat, right? And I'm nowhere close. I can squat 350, I can do it for reps, I can deadlift like crazy, I can, generally go hard, on the sled and stuff like that, but I can't do a one-legged squat. And that thing, you don't just wake up in the morning and start doing it, right? It takes some time.
No.
And it takes a lot of like rehabilitative work and development work and foundational work to get there, right? And that's kind of what we've been doing for like a year now, right?
About a year, yeah, for sure.
And
a little over a year.
Yeah, and we're getting closer, but we're not there yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so satisfying. Like that journey, sometimes it sucks, right? Sometimes I come in and like I can't even walk. Brenda wheels me in a wheelchair, and you like, push on my ankle or something, and like all of a sudden I can walk again, right?
Right.
But that long-term vision, right? It just doesn't click for people, right? People don't want to put in the hard work. Why is that? Why doesn't anybody want to why doesn't anybody want to pay the price for a really good goal?
So I've wondered about this also a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's something. I always wonder if it's something that's like built in, like some kind of short-term ambition, or like some kind of short-term you need to do this task and then followed by this task and this task and just keep your head down and survive thing, or is it something that's built in slowly from society?
Yeah.
Where it's like society wants you right now to just be a grunt,
Yeah.
just do this,
Yeah.
this, and this. Don't think about, and then maybe you have some percentage that are supposed to think of the long-term goals for society, and I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we talk about what we're not taught to do, right?
Right.
Like, okay, so we're not taught how to balance a checkbook, right? We're not taught nutrition, right? Unless you're in the university and you're taking some advanced level courses, right?
For sure.
We don't teach, kindergarten kids nutrition.
But I mean, really, even a lot of doctors don't learn nutrition,
Yeah, I know.
which is kind of crazy to me too.
Yeah.
So.
But the other thing that we don't teach is we don't teach people to dream, right? We don't teach people how to set like completely unreasonable goals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Dan, I mean, you must have unreasonable goals in your life.
I do.
Yeah. I mean, you're an unreasonable person.
I'm
right?
an unreasonable person by nature. Yes, I think described by many as that way, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of my big goals, I've always, well, not always, but I feel like I've started to get a lot of what I wanted out of life when I started to set bigger goals, like you're mentioning.
Yeah.
So I started with the idea that I wanted to be great, right? So, and that was my first thought. And I was
What
like,
an
what do you
awesome
want,
goal.
Dan?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I want to be great. I want people to like remember me, and I want people to like know that I did X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, what does that look like? Like, what would a great person in my mind do
Yeah.
every day? And so then when I make decisions, I'm like, which decision would make me great? And not only like great, like with the way that I feel and stuff, but maybe great in other people's eyes. And be like, well, normally I would do this, but I unfortunately have to do this hard, very difficult thing because this is what people are going to expect somebody great to do.
Right.
So,
Well, like, how old were you when you said that? When you said, I want to be great?
like, how old am I? I'm 41 now.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, you didn't-
37 to 38.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, fairly
Okay.
recently, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
36, 37, 37.
Okay, so I'm 62, and so through the lens of 62, 38 looks young. Okay, so good for you. You set a huge goal while you were still young, and you got a lot of runway to get that done, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
Okay, so like you said to me, you haven't died yet, so that gives you a lot of runway, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, my argument was I haven't died yet, so I should not be able to die, I would think.
So you might have a couple hundred
Logically.
years to be great, right?
Yeah, a couple years, a couple hundred.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. But you knew that you knew two things. It was going to take time, right? And it wasn't going to be linear. Like you were going to have to like check off some boxes, some prerequisites, right?
Well, that is a great. So the linear part is a great point. That I think there's almost no progression in human nature that is linear, but the expectations are always linear. So I continue with what you're saying, but I believe that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's where I was going with it, right? You knew that it wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take a long time, and it wasn't going to be linear. There would be diversions. There would be setbacks, right? And people don't deal well with setbacks, right? People always want to they lose sight of that big picture, and they keep focusing on like every day I have to be incrementally better than I was the day before, and that's just not realistic, right?
So I actually, this was another part of that discussion with Jack, is
Yeah.
I said, one of the best things that you can do right now is fail miserably and then try to come back from it.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're not failing, then you're not dealing with adversity.
Yeah.
And even if you were just looking at a job, one of the best aspects an employer would look at is how does this person deal with adversity, and have they ever dealt with adversity?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just a small segment besides like your giant goals.
Yeah. So, Dan, we're starting to get into a groove here, right? We're
Yeah.
starting to riff on some ideas. And, I prepared this little script here. And I had some notes. And, I'm just going to tear that up right now because
That's how it usually
we're
happens.
going, we don't need it anymore, right? We're going in the
That's
right
right.
direction. So off we go with the
I
notes.
love that.
Yeah. And now I've completely forgotten what I wanted to talk about, right?
No worries.
But yeah, setting those big goals, right? Society wants us to always be beautiful. They want us to always be young, to be rich, to be liked, to be loved, to be respected, and none of that is realistic, right?
Right.
And gosh, it sucks because so much of what we have to do depends on like going it alone, right? Going against the grain, ignoring like that advice that people give us, that bad talk that's always in our heads or in other people's voices, like that's not realistic, you're never going to make it, no possible way. Like for somebody to rise above that, they have to be great. And Dan, okay, so the good news is you are currently rising above it, so you are already
I don't
great.
know if that's true or not.
Because nobody else is going to tell you that, but I'll tell that to you today, right?
I appreciate
You're
it.
already there, right? You're great, but you'll want to keep improving on that. But it sucks because it's so hard. Like there's so little positive feedback in the world and so much negative feedback. People just like trying to undercut you and say you'll never make it. You're never going to be good enough. You're already not good enough, and you got nothing to build on, and that's going to take forever. And what is it about like a person that causes them to like either get mad at the world and rise above it, or to turn off the noise and rise above it? Right, those are skills too that we don't teach.
It is. So
Yeah.
so that's what I wonder if there's like so I'm a firm believer, one, like if you look at things from a logical standpoint, which I usually try to do.
Yeah.
Usually.
Usually. Yeah, sure. There's
in
no
a good day.
emotion in
Right,
Dan Gilbert, right? None at all. He's
Right.
totally rational, totally
Always
logical.
rational.
Always,
Rational
yeah.
is what people
Yeah.
would call me, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I think that you look at us as like any kind of living creature, right?
Right.
And we are meant to be in a society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that to me is in the forefront of my mind when I think about anything that you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So doing things where like you need to be like this one off and go off alone and do all this stuff by yourself.
Yeah.
And with all this responsibility, you're supposed to you have a weakness, you need to work on your weakness. I disagree with all of those things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You should use your strengths to better society.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to find out what your strengths are, what your passions are, use that to better society, and then society on the other side of things is supposed to make up for your weaknesses. Now there's exceptions to every rule,
Okay.
right? So like, if you have like a complete debilitating weakness that is just like ruining your life, you need to figure out a way to either get better with that or get it supported, right? So that
Yeah.
does become slightly your responsibility on that.
Sure.
But overall, that's what I think the picture should be, and that's not what gets taught, I think, in our current society as I know it, right?
Yeah.
Because I've only lived in the United States. I've lived
Yeah.
in Maryland my whole life. So again, I don't have a whole lot to draw from that way. But I mean, that's not what I've been taught in any way in my
Right.
formal schooling or anything.
Right. I mean, the way. So I didn't do very good in school, right? Because I was
Me
always
neither.
like, I don't know. I just there was something about it that just didn't click for me. But somehow guys like you and I, we made it anyway. We managed to like leverage our strengths or leverage the force of our will to get stuff done, right? In spite of like
For
you know,
good or
sort of
bad.
yeah, right. Okay, fair enough. Hopefully for good, Maybe there's a little bad out there. I mean, I can't claim to always be making the right choice, for other people. And I'm not always a pleasant person, and I'm often difficult to deal with. But
I see that.
yeah, okay. So you don't know me very well. Right? We just haven't gotten to that point yet. But the deck is stacked against everybody that wants to rise, right? Unless it's a super rare individual that has everything going for them, right? I've never met a person like that, but it's really tough. And you're right. We're born. We're programmed to be members of a society. We're communal people, right?
For sure.
We're social, and that's really important. But everything we do, I guess, Dan, everything we do tells us, do not be a nonconformist, right? For the good of society, you have to like fit in that groove that society has carved for you, and you have to like fill that role and be a drone, and your life will be so much easier for it, right? If you just conform. And okay, that makes sense, but it's so hard for guys like us that wake up every day saying, hell no, I will not do what you told me. I mean, it almost makes me think of the lyrics to a song, right? Like F you, I won't do what you told me, right?
Rage against the machine, for sure.
Right. Okay. So maybe that's a good podcast for the future, right? Like, what's our musical influences, right? And we can have some theme music pumping in the background.
I like it.
It'd be a hoot. But okay. So like, I have always been raging against the machine, and where does that come from? Like, you never get rewarded for that. You have to go out and you have to like sit down alone at night and say, is this suffering worth it?
But don't you get rewarded to it?
I want to bring that back. Is this suffering worth it? Which is probably the underlying thought that I have about like this whole episode, right?
Yeah.
Is the suffering worth it, right? And a lot of people, it's just not worth it to
But
them.
you do get so I do kind of push back on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think that formal schooling, for the most part, does not like that at all.
Right.
However, you do get rewarded in different ways. For example, you end up with, I feel like, fairly excellent stories. And so then when anybody does,
Okay.
right? So you
Yeah,
have great
yeah.
stories, right? So then because you're raging against the machine, then you're going to do stuff that no one else has really done.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some comedic episodes that happen with it. You're also going to have some like life lesson episodes from it. And when you talk to people, I feel like that makes you more interesting. Therefore, sometimes I think it's easier to form relationships. You also get applauded for some of your stuff, even in school, by your peers as well. So sometimes that can make you more popular with your peers. Sometimes it can make you less as well.
Yeah.
But I think you don't not get any reward from it.
Yeah.
It's not completely baseless. It's just all in all, formal schooling in normal society is not super happy with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Maybe I just woke up this morning feeling sorry for myself.
Nah.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, is the suffering worth it, right? I mean, there is a level of suffering, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I'll just go ahead and draw a line in the sand and say, in almost all cases, the suffering is worth it, right?
Right.
That's been my personal experience, right? Either I've learned something from the suffering, or I have improved through the suffering, right? And that suffering might be like just the agony of like pulling the sled at Mad Lab.
Yeah.
Or it might be the suffering of like getting home from the bar at 10:30 and it's raining and it's dark outside, and I got to take the trash cans up the hill and put them out, right? And that sucks, right?
Right.
But it's that, I don't know, like suffering, to me, Dan, suffering and discipline have always gone hand in hand, and the practice of discipline has always paid off for me, always.
I think that's a main point in that a lot of people bring up, right?
Yeah.
They say that you should. Have you ever heard of Jordan Peterson?
No.
He's a podcaster,
Yeah.
and I think I think by trade he was a psychologist.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
We got to get him on the show.
That would be somewhat amazing. But he was one of the ones that also said, and many people have said this, that you should suffer a little bit every day. Right. Even if it's self-imposed.
Yeah.
Like, you need to do something that's going to make you suffer every day. And I think that's where like a lot of your morning routines come from, with workouts outside and stuff like that. But I think that is important, because then you have to deal with adversity, and then you have some kind of relativity, right? So you have some kind of relative means. I'm suffering, now the rest of my day is better because I'm not dealing with X, Y, and Z, and now I'm able to handle maybe these things better because relatively it's better than what I just did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Dan, I'm a relatively selfish person, right? Just ask my wife.
I think that's a normal human trait too.
Maybe I'm worse than most normal humans, right? But my Buddhist friends will tell me, suffering is the difference between what you have and what you want, right? So desire, like they always make it a little trickier. They say desire is the basis of all suffering, right? Like I want to be beautiful. All right, well, that's going to cost you, Alex.
Yeah.
That's going to cost you big time because I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But yeah, that informs a lot of my thought process, a lot of my decision making. Right? I want something, and I don't have it right now, and there's going to be a price to pay for that. Right?
Right.
And I don't mean like a financial price necessarily. I mean like a psychic price.
Could be any price.
Yeah.
Right? Could be an energy price. Could be a mental price.
Right.
Could be a sanity price. Like,
Right.
who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean that's how I get through the day. Right. Like when people are saying that's stupid, that's unreasonable, that's not very smart. No one's ever done that before. You'll never get there. It can't happen. It's physically impossible. It defies the laws of physics. I'm like, okay, so what you're telling me then is just going to take a little longer, right?
Right. Well, going back to what you said before, because now I'm really thinking about this.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a couple students like you and I were, right? Yeah. Rebelling against society, rebelling against formal schooling, not doing well in formal schooling.
Right.
So there's two avenues of thought here. If your goal was to improve society overall, right? I think that the formal school system and just youth in general are obviously super important, like how people are developed. But then is it important to take those individuals and be like, all right, this obviously does not work for you. Let's put you in another environment that you could thrive.
Yeah.
Or is it important that those individuals like have to fight against it and struggle and do all that stuff? So because the struggle, to your point, the suffering, if the suffering is almost always worth it, then it is an important piece, right? Then how would you go about like growing people to do what they're supposed to do to improve society, if that makes sense, right?
So okay, fair enough. Dan, I had a mentor one time. He was a high school coach, and he said, Alex, anything worth having is worth working for, okay? And that made such a difference in my young life. Like, okay, I mean, it was almost like Coach gave me permission to like have dreams, and to dump energy into that, to spend time trying to achieve those things, right? If you want it, it's worth working for. He never said, and you will have to work for it, right? I figured that out the hard way. But, but yeah, and the other thing, Dan, is that I need to be real careful when we talk about like society and suffering. Like suffering is not a good thing for society, right? Suffering is actually really bad for society, but suffering is. Now we get into the
but then that's also relative, right? So it's like, do you have a bunch of families and people starving without any real path to stop that? That's really bad suffering.
Really bad.
That's really bad. That's what we want to prevent.
So on camera, can we shake on that one?
We
totally agree.
All right.
Love it.
All right. So our society we don't want it to long-term starve here.
Right. So suffering for society is really bad, but suffering for individuals is sometimes really good. Like not for itself, but as a means to an end, right?
Okay.
Like, and I mean suffering through discipline. I don't mean suffering like through like hurting yourself or letting people hurt you. I mean suffering as an act of discipline, right? Like I am going to go to the gym and I'm going to grind so hard for so long, for weeks and months and years on end, to get what I want, right?
Right.
That's probably a good kind of suffering. But man, I just want to make it real clear to all the listeners, like I am not advocating society suffering, okay? Right? I want everyone to be happy, okay? I want everyone to be well fed. I want them to sleep good at night. But
so maybe suffering once you're outside of like your basic needs.
Oh wow. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Wow.
Does it come down to that?
Yeah. Okay. So like I'm picturing Maslow's hierarchy now.
Right. That's what I am too.
I can't believe we started with like what are you having for dinner tonight? And
we did start with what are you having for dinner tonight? Something. So that's good.
Yeah. But yeah, like okay. Fair enough. You can't you cannot, under Maslow, you cannot reach the pinnacle of self-actualization until you've taken care of everything else, right?
Right.
Until you are fed and clothed and warm, and you've got water, and you've got, you got some love in your life, and, but you can't reach that pinnacle of like development as an individual until you take care of all that other stuff. So, okay, I don't know. The picture I have in my mind is, climbing up Maslow's pyramid, right? And now when we talk about climbing, the
I know
hierarchy,
I know exactly what you're talking
picture,
about.
right?
I'm just
It's
thinking
now, like for me, like climbing is hard. Like my legs start to hurt. And I
Yeah,
start
yeah.
losing my breath, right? And I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to keep going because I want to get to the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe in Maslow's hierarchy, like the suffering is implied. Like, of course, you're going to have to work hard for it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But then, so if let's say you've got all your needs taken care of,
Yeah.
then wouldn't the next step be like a natural step? And this does sound kind of common sense, but this is not what is thought of at all. It's always like,
right.
all right, your needs are taken care of. How can you further your professional goals? How can you further your personal goals? But then shouldn't you be like, is everybody's needs taken care of? No. Then that should be where I should direct my energy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can go with that. I agree. Some years ago, in a professional setting, I was doing career coaching with people, right? And I've talked to you about some of the experiences I had there. But somebody said, hey, I'm just like an entry level guy right now, but I would like to be a supervisor someday. And maybe then I'd like to be a manager, and then maybe I'd like to be a director, and maybe someday, off in the future, I could be a vice president, right? How do I get there, Alex? And I said, okay, well, think of your sphere of influence, okay? Right now, you come in at 7 o'clock in the evening, you work a 12-hour shift, right? And you do your job, and you're actually pretty good at it, okay? But I'm not going to promote you because you're just good at what you're doing right now. You need to demonstrate that your sphere of influence extends beyond just yourself and doing your job, right? Are you helping other people do their jobs, okay? When you start doing that, when you're working one step beyond sort of like your sphere of influence, then you're eligible. You're eligible to take
That's
the next
interesting.
step.
Did
right?
you? So I know this is
Yeah.
where did you just like? Is that something that you thought of, or is that something you read, or like somebody
No.
told you that, or like? Because I've never heard. That's a cool way to think of
Yeah.
it.
So if somebody taught that to me, I don't remember who.
Right.
If I read it somewhere, I don't remember where.
I have many of
so
those in my head.
I'm reluctant. Yeah, I'm reluctant to claim like authorship on that, but that's the idea that I've always been telling people, right?
Yeah.
So so there's these concentric spheres of
For sure.
influence,
I
right?
can see it.
And so the way I spelled this out was like, okay, so right now you need to master yourself and your job, right? And then you need to make contributions to the people around you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you need to start, as you move up, you need to start making contributions to other departments, not just your own. And then you need to start making contributions to the entire company. And you can see how the scope or the size of your influence in the business is increasing over time, right? And you can apply that same methodology like to your goals in development, ultimately becoming like an asset to society, right? You don't even have to be a conformist, right?
But that is an excellent way to think of it.
Well,
actually,
and so it got to the point where I said, in its ultimate extension, Dan or whoever it was I was talking to, giving coaching to, 20, 30 years ago, I said, in its ultimate extension, right, you're not just making contributions to the company, you're making major contributions to the industry, multiple companies, right? And then, in its ultimate realization, you're actually making contributions to all mankind, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, Dan, that would be the ultimate. Now, how we got from, like, what are you having for dinner tonight, to how are you going to make a contribution to the benefit of all mankind? I don't know, but we got there somehow.
We did get there somehow. For sure.
Continuing with that theme, have you ever read the book Dune by Frank Herbert?
I don't know if I've read the whole entire book.
Yeah.
Because Dune, I know a lot about Dune because
Right.
I've even played like video games based on it. I've
Yeah.
watched, I obviously watched like the new movie that came out and stuff. I read, if I didn't, I at least might have finished the first book.
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of Dune books.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do know a lot about.
Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know the premise, right? Dune is a book about a planet that doesn't have any water. Okay, and yeah, it's basically a book. I don't know. It's a book about this. It's a political story, but it's really fundamentally a book about ecology. Okay,
And resources.
right? And so there are these people that live on this planet that has no open running water, right? And they thrive, and they are committed to this vision that someday they can transform the planet to have water on the planet, right? And they've figured out how to do this. They've figured out how to survive. They've figured out how to save surplus water, and they figured out how much water it's going to take to transform the planet. And when they figured this out, they asked their planetary ecologist, how long do you think this will take? And their ecologist said somewhere between 400 and 500 years, right? I mean, a lesser society would have crumbled in the
For
face
sure.
of that news, right? Like, I'm working towards something I will never ever see. And you know, when we start thinking about like sphere of influence and the greater good and the long plan, the long game, right? Never do we talk about how will I impact the lives of people that won't be born for another 500 years, right?
When you start thinking that way, do you think that it's really important to, trying to just objectively think about it?
Yeah.
So to think like that, one major topic that comes through would be religion, right? Because somebody would almost have to believe in some, not necessarily they have to, but they'd almost have to believe in some form of either afterlife or something bigger than themselves besides just society. Do you think it's possible, or do you think like there's like a really low percentage out there? So you obviously have some people that don't believe in any kind of religion or afterlife at all.
Right.
Are they still capable of using like the main focus of their being to further society, or is it important to have, or is it necessary to have some kind of other vision that way?
Yeah, I don't know, Dan.
I don't either.
I don't think religion. I don't think religion is the tipping factor on that one, right? Like, you know, like, okay, in my religion, I'm a Christian. In my religion, like, you know, if you do things right, you die and you go to heaven and you live forever, right? I don't think that's necessary, though, to build a societal vision of like what could happen in 100 years or 500 years or 5,000 years, right? I don't think because whether you believe in God or not, or whether you have a personal religion, one thing is for certain: when you're dead, there'll be a lot of people still left that are alive, right? And you know, you could decide you don't care about them, or you could decide that you do, right?
Would it be necessary then let's take religion out of it, would it be necessary for your leaders with these ideas? Because it would take, you would have to have natural leaders that would be like, this is what we do in society. We're always going to further, because then you're also going to get, whether people believe or not, you have people that will never ask why, and they're always going to do their job. So do those leaders need to have kids?
I don't know.
Because then having kids would make you think, I want a better society for the next.
Yeah, that's helpful, right? It's helpful to have kids, to put it in context, right? Like kids help that vision a little bit. But man, like when you like that word leader or leaders, that's a trigger word for me, right? Because I am like, politically, I am probably like a socialist or maybe even an anarchist, right? Like, I'm not a fan of like big organized government. I mean, I am. I love the interstate highway system. I love a strong military. I like that. I like the benefits of a big government. But when it comes to like the people that are running it, I don't have a lot of confidence, right? I have a lot more confidence in like people like you, or people that I know and respect. That I have a lot more confidence in them and their ability to carry the future.
So you're saying I can rely on your vote?
Yes. No, Dan. The minute you tell me that you're running for office, all bets are off, man. It's like, what happened to you, man? I thought you were cool.
I failed the test.
but yeah, I don't think religion is necessarily required to make a person committed to a future outcome. Okay, and you didn't ask the question that way, but that's what I heard.
Would it be required for someone to lead that outcome? Because I don't think it's required to follow it, right? Because you do have some people that are like when we did the boxes the other day, right? So some of them are just going to they're going to be fairly drone-like, and they're going to do whatever it is. They're not really going to ask questions as long as they're comfortable and they can survive. Wolfdog.
There we go. This episode brought to you by Wolfdog.
I don't know if she's on camera. Oh, she is
definitely on camera.
It is great. Good dog. She likes wires for some reason, so she'll like lay down in the wires. She's been in many of our podcasts.
Yeah.
So my question would be like, is it necessary to have some kind of further thinking, like a religion or kids or something that makes you think further to be a leader of that movement?
Maybe. You certainly have to have an idea, right? You have to have a vision. You have to be able to communicate that. So, when we talk about earlier, we talked about the sphere of influence, right? The farther out there you get into those outer realms of your sphere of influence, like certainly by the time you get out to what contribution are you making to mankind, the field has thinned considerably, right?
Considerably.
Not everybody's going that far out, right? Most people, I'll take a shot in the dark here, Dan. Maybe you can disagree with me, but I think most people are going to stick with that inner sphere. I'm going to take care of myself,
right?
And they're at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. They're just trying to get through the day, right? And that's okay. That's okay, right? Not everybody can be like some sort of history-changing, transcendental figure like.
And we wouldn't want everybody to be
that. No, we
wouldn't. That would be
That'd be way too many visions to manage, right?
I don't know what would happen, but it wouldn't be great, I would think.
But, okay, so, we deify George Washington, right? I don't know if George Washington had a vision of creating this wonderful country. I think George Washington just wanted to get out from under the economic thumb of England, right? So he was trying to make a living, and but I don't know.
But he did have a big goal.
He did have a big goal, and he was willing to die for it. Right?
Yeah,
and that's pretty cool.
So it comes down to conviction.
I think it does. I think there's a lot of energy in conviction, and okay, so why do you get up? Why do you get up in the morning knowing that you're going to suffer? Right, here we go. We're going back 20 minutes in the podcast here. Like, why would you want to do that to yourself?
But then
because you've got a conviction and you believe in something.
But I do for sure get that.
Yeah.
I think some people do. I think some goals though are based on, I know that I will suffer more if I don't do this because I've not done this before. You know what I'm saying? So there's some trial and error, like some short-term trial and error that happens.
Sure.
Too. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So okay, trial and error. That's a great topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to talk to, when I was at the top of my career, like a couple years ago, just before I retired, I really I'd done everything professionally that I wanted to do. And it took me 35 years to get there, right? But I had the plan, I was willing to do the work, I had the conviction, and I had the time and grade. And people would ask me, like, wow, you're so successful, like, what do you do? And I said, make no mistake, all of my success is built on a mountain of failure. Right? So I
remember you saying that.
I've basically failed in every possible way that you can. But I never got tired of that, I never got tired of like getting back up and trying again.
What made you so I feel like if you're told at a young age you need to fail and you need to be able to come back from failure, and that's an expectation, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Where was it, do you feel like in your career, like was there some kind of tipping point where you're like, oh, failure is okay, it's okay to fail, and here's how I'm going to come back from it?
Yeah, gosh, Dan, I feel like you're my therapist now. I don't even know how to answer that question. I'm going to have to like do hypnosis or something.
I'm trying to think of when it happened for me.
Like, I've never been afraid to fail. And maybe because I started failing early.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I can't ever remember a time in my life where I wasn't like failing at something and being embarrassed by it,
For sure.
and being like regretful about the failure. Dan, okay, here's a question for you, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, why have we not been invaded by space aliens yet?
Well, so I have a good answer to this.
Yeah, I need one word. You want some help here?
Evolution.
Wolverines. Okay. Right? Why are Wolverines so rare? Because they don't even want to mate. They see a potential mate and they kill them, right? That's how badass Wolverines
Jeez.
are. Right? That Wolverines always win. Okay. I'm just calling it right now for the audience. You know, hey guys, if you don't believe,
Have you ever seen a wild Wolverine?
I have not.
I haven't
You
either.
know why?
Because you'd be dead.
Yeah, because I'd be dead. I wouldn't be here to report it.
They're
right?
serious, man.
Yeah, they're really serious. So Dan, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of the podcast here. Do we want to give a shout out to any of our sponsors or endorsers, or do we want to grovel for sponsorship and endorsement?
I think
I
we
do.
will. Yeah,
I do.
I think we do definitely want to grovel for it.
Yeah.
I would say.
So the first thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to Jocko Willink. Okay, so
Yeah.
Jocko's been an influence. He's been a motivator. But you know what Jocko's never done? He's never been on this podcast before. So
He hasn't
you know,
yet.
I'd like to yet. Okay, and so maybe he's shy. Maybe he doesn't know us yet. He'll get to know us sooner or later, right? Because this is going to be an awesome podcast. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there, Jocko. When you watch this, we'd love to have you come on the show. Okay.
And we have your energy drinks in our refrigerator up there.
Yeah, right. So there you go. There's a little endorsement. I'd like to thank Jocko for
We have Jocko goes all the time.
Yeah, thank him for the influence. Thank him for the motivation. Thank him for the energy drinks. That's awesome. Couple other shout outs I'd like to do real quick.
Yeah.
Maybe you got some on your list. Want to thank the good people down at Local Motive. Okay, always a place where we go and we get good drinks, we get good food, we get good friendships down there. Okay, that's a great place to be. Like to thank all the good people at Mad Lab Performance. Okay,
they're all right.
Yeah, they're all right. I have not had a bad experience working at Mad Lab yet. Right, but I've had nothing but success working at Mad Lab. So I want to give a shout out to Mad Lab. If our listeners are looking to get better, go to Mad Lab. Right. If you're nervous, they will be gentle to you. If you're hard, they will go as hard as you can and as hard as you want. Okay.
If you want to take over a small country, they'll be in your army.
Yeah. If you're looking for a tribe, come to Mad Lab. You'll find your people here. Okay.
That's it.
So, Nautical Life, Nautical Homestead, right? I don't know anything about it, but I'm wearing one of their shirts, so it'd be wrong for me to not shout out.
I want my buddy Nick to start that company up again.
Come on, Nick, let's go. And you're always welcome on the podcast, Nick. Who else, Dan? Who else do we want to?
CNA Auto.
Okay, right.
If anything happens to your car, wheel falls off, engine blows up.
That's right.
Walk across the street, CNA Auto, and Adam's there.
Ask for Adam.
For all of your automotive needs.
Yeah, he's legit. He's the real deal.
He is.
Anybody else, Dan? Any?
Oh, I'm sure we're gonna have a fine list.
Yeah.
And I do expect sponsors to start calling in the next 10 minutes or so.
That's right.
So we have to field all these phone calls.
Yeah, and if you call now, operators are standing by. We're having a buy one get one for free. Whatever you pledge today, Dan will match. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Up to $15,000. So. Call in now. This hour we're looking for $150,000.
$150,000 should about do it.
Yeah. Okay. And later on tonight, after the podcast, you can turn into this station. You can watch Deadlifting for Dollars. Okay?
Deadlifting for Dollars.
Everyone's favorite crime scene show. Okay.
That's a good one.
And that's it. I'm Dan, honestly, I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I'm just about talked out now.
Well, Alex, you're the man.
Hey, thanks again for another great episode. Always a pleasure.
Always.